Hi, good evening. I call this meeting to order at 7:01. We have board members present physically tonight. We have Ted Gergen, Nick Poloni, myself, Dana Powers, Jack Nicolai, and Steve Brown. Nobody is remotely or nobody is absent. Administration present physically. We have Connie Valenza. Administration on the phone with us. We have Ryan Sandberg, Patty Fitzgerald, and Judy Mrachkowski. Please, if you are physically in the building, if you could make sure that you sign this sheet in the LGI, and please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bless you. May I have a motion on the agenda, please?
I move to accept the agenda as printed.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries. We have us all in the room here. That's exciting. President's report, I do not have anything to report at this time. Thank you. Steve?
Yes, I just have one item, information about the upcoming spring election for the school board. And by the way, I did receive from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards in the mail a few days ago their school district election schedule. And just for information purposes, I did contact the Wisconsin Election Commission yesterday just for information purposes with regards to how we have run elections in the past, which have been accurate in terms of when we have an open seat based on a resignation. And I'll mention that in a minute. Anyway, I'll read this. There will be two 3-year positions for election on the board for the 2021 spring election. These are current seats held by Nick Poloni and Jack Nicolai, and also a 1-year position for election on the board. And that current seat is held by Ted Gergen. I should note that when we do have the election in April, that as we have done in the past, that the top 2 vote getters will get the 3-year position, and the person with the third most number of votes will receive the 1-year position. And that's what I was asking the Wisconsin Election Commission about, just to make sure that we were doing it correctly. There are some school districts that run that as a special election, as a totally separate election, and they do that out of their decision, out of their own choice, but that is not required by the Wisconsin Election Commission. The notice of school board elections will be published in the Kenosha News and posted in the usual places by November 24th of 2020. Declaration of candidacy papers can be picked up in the district administration office between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. A declaration of candidacy papers must be returned to the district administration office by 5 p.m. on January 5th of 2021. And for those who are on the board now running, and for anyone else listening who's interested, you need to fill out the papers, and there's no need for any signatures on the election papers as there are for other elected positions. The deadline for incumbents wishing to file notice of non-candidacy is 5 p.m. on December 28th of 2020. In the event there are more than 6 people who apply for the school board, there will be a primary election, which is in February. Otherwise, the election will be in April of 2021. Okay.
Thank you.
Any
Clerk.
questions from anyone?
No.
Okay. That's all I have.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ted, the treasurer's report.
Sure, I'd like to read the treasurer's report dated October of 2020. Their general fund cash account with a balance of $89,249.66. credit card account with a balance of $21,324.16. The EBC Flex and HRA cash account with a balance of $14,395.34. The Capital Improvement Fund with a balance of $413,322.79. Petty cash, $400. LGIP, $62,898.23. For a grand asset total of October 2020 of $601,590.18. Like to move to approve the treasurer's report dated October 2020 as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries.
Like to review the payment of accounts payable bills by check and vendor as presented, including check numbers 69,762 through 69,811 and 202,000,271 through 202,000,308. One question that I had was the last treasurer's report included checks up through 69760. So this is 62. So there's that 69761, and I know that there's some transition in the business office as we speak. So I think it would just be important to get that check, that information about that check, Connie.
What was the number on that again?
69761. It's just one check that's probably within that date range.
I will check on that, and if need be, we can always amend the report
minutes,
at the
yeah.
next meeting.
So I'd like to.
Oh,
Yes.
does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
You mentioned 69761 that
Yep.
you're missing, but I see two checks number 69762 with different amounts, both to Thrift Financial up at the top.
Yeah, so it could be a mistype or something.
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah, we'll just have Connie look into it and she can get back to us.
Typo?
Absolutely, I'm sure.
I
Right.
will check that out.
Any other questions before we go on? No? Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to move to approve the payment of accounts payable bills as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries. We are on to minutes of the regular school board meeting dated 10/27.
I move to, I move to approve the special school board meeting.
Whoops. Sorry, regular first.
I'm sorry, I was
worries.
just looking at the agenda here.
It's fine.
I move to approve the minutes of the school board meeting of September 22nd.
October.
I'm sorry,
Numbers are
Jack, why don't you,
hard.
I'm on the wrong.
You got it, Steve? You the man.
No, go on, I'm sorry.
I move to accept the minutes of the regular school board meeting 10/27/2020 as printed amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries. And then Steve, how about the special school board meeting? Or you can take a pass, either way. I just need a motion on the next one.
I wasn't there, so I can't.
Oh, okay, then you're abstaining, got it. Anybody?
I move that we
Thank
accept
you.
the minutes of the special school board meeting 11/3/2020 as printed amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
Yep.
And motion carries. Okay, oh, you
So I
want to
do
kick us off?
want to just talk a little bit about public comments. I'll let you go through, but we did handle them a little differently because we knew that this would be a board meeting where certainly people were interested and had things to share. So typically though, just to kind of clarify, we only allow written comments for the public commentary. That's been going on now for quite some time since the COVID-19. There is a limit under board policy that basically says that this public commentary period lasts for 15 minutes. So clearly we got many more public commentary or many more comments than would fill that 15 minutes. What I have cataloged, if you look at the slide that I have up, we received 31 public comments from parents. 2 were in support of the Kenosha County DHS recommendation. 1 was in support of that recommendation with modifications, and 28 were not in support of Kenosha County DHS recommendations. So this evening, after talking with the board president, the first 5 submitted will be read, but I want to assure anybody who is watching this, the board has access to all of those and will have read all of those, so that input would have been given. And then those will be accessible to the public as well once we get through the board meeting. We received 2 public comments from staff, 2 in support, but also with the modification extending 2 weeks beyond the winter holiday break instead of ending after the winter holiday break. And then we received 1 public comment from a student, one that was not in support of the Kenosha County DHS recommendation. I want to clarify that names and addresses when submitting comments are required, and those were submitted and verified prior to this meeting. However, they will not be included in the actual public reading of those comments, but they would be accessible to somebody seeking that information.
Once again, I am Dana Powers, and I am going to represent you guys here by reading these messages aloud for everyone to hear. Again, just piggybacking on, we all got access to these Monday or Tuesday. So know that we have had these in well enough advance, and we have read, I'm assuming, every single one. Okay, so speaking for all of us then, we have read all of your comments. So I will be reading as Connie mentioned before. So the first one here. Hello, I'd like to voice my concern to the board as a mother with 3 daughters attending Salem Elementary currently. If the health officials are recommending to go fully virtual during those months because of an uptick in COVID, then I feel it would be illogical to not listen to them. I fully support going completely virtual if that is what is being recommended. Thank you. Number 2, hello there. I am a parent whose children are part of the blended learning curriculum at Salem Grade School. I believe we should switch to completely virtual learning. I work at a large company that is an essential service and has seen COVID spread like wildfire, even though a lot of cases are mild. We have a responsibility to our community members who are more susceptible to severe infection. Thanks for your time. So those were the 2 that were in support of the health department's recommendation. Now this is the one that is in support of and with recommendations. Hi board, my views on closure and options my family would wholly support to mitigate spreading of COVID. Salem seems to be doing particularly well with our protocols and protections to limit the impact of cases and resulting spread. For that reason, I can understand the reluctance by some to want to do anything different than our status quo. However, I do think some of our good fortune has to be apologies. I do think some of our good fortune has to be,
Has to an extent.
here we go. Has to an extent been luck with our greater movement during the holidays. We can't predict that current protocols will be sufficient. To balance all of that, it seems there are 2 possible options that could be accepted by our school community that would not necessitate full closure for the period of time recommended by the county. Number 1, required virtual learning for all, the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving and Christmas. Many other schools are planning this model. School runs from approximately 8:30 to 2 with kids online with their class for the duration. Number 2, elective virtual learning the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving and Christmas for families currently attending hybrid or fully in person. This would allow families that don't want disruption to current learning experiences to remain, but allowing those that would like flexibility during a higher risk period to operate more conservatively. It would also be good to know if the board has set a threshold of cases at which you would at any time close completely. Thank you for sharing the numbers of cases we've already experienced. That ongoing information, coupled with the knowledge of any threshold, will help families monitor and make plans to react for a smoother transition. We've been really pleased with how Salem has been handling the past several months, and we appreciate that you've been asking for parent input going forward. Thank you for all the hard work you do for our kids. Just as an FYI, next on our agenda is going through this matter, and I know that Connie specifically will be touching on a number of these things, so knowing that there are questions that are coming up, they will be handled by Connie. Okay, now I will be reading the first 5 that came in support, and somebody's going to stop me when I've read the 5. Yep. Okay. Hello, Diane. I am emailing you in regards to the letter I received about Salem School District possibly switching to strictly virtual learning. As a parent of 3, one of which is autistic, I have firsthand experience that while virtual education works for some, it definitely does not for others. My autistic daughter struggled tremendously while we did virtual in the beginning of the year. Watching a video is not the same to her as having a teacher in person. She didn't seem to retain any of the things she learned, as it was more of a movie for her. She also receives IEP, and this just cannot be done virtually, as it's not the one-on-one interaction. Her doing multiple virtual meetings during the day ends up stressing her out more than helping. She is one of the children, among many, I'm sure, that need and benefit from that in-person interaction, as it is a much different learning experience. Also, as a parent of 3, the amount of stuff we have to try to juggle to help our children is insane. Between them, they use approximately 10 plus different websites. If they happen to have meetings at the same time, it can be a bit chaotic. I am fortunate enough to stay home with my kids, but I know many parents who work full-time and then have to either stay home from work to be with their kids for school, or they come home from work just to help their kids with 5+ hours of schoolwork. And another consideration is that many parents can't stay home from work, so they now have to hire a sitter or put their children in daycare. That is not affordable for many families and is the reason I stay home. Many parents struggled to feed their children during the time we were all virtual as well, and I delivered food to many families through the lunch program. I feel that we, the parents, should continue to be offered the current program, virtual, in-person, or a mix. This way, parents can choose what fits best for their family and situation. I hope this email finds you well, and I apologize if it rambles on a bit. Please contact me if you have any questions. Thank you for your time. Number 2. Hello, board members. My family is new to the district this year and could not be happier with the move we have made. I was so excited that this district gave us the choice to either come back in person or go virtual, and you went a step further by having a blended program as well. I was also almost brought to tears when I received a note from my son's speech pathologist the second day of school. In the past, I have had to call the school a month in and find out if he was even getting services. Last year, he did not receive services until the second month of school, and I had to fight with the school to get the minutes made up. Needless to say, the staff you have here are amazing. Moving on to the real reason for this email, it will be a disservice to have my kids go virtual, my son especially. He was just diagnosed with autism and needs to have that human interaction to learn. I do not believe he will best be served in a virtual program and will suffer because of it. My daughter is still in the process of making friends in her new school. She would also suffer going virtual. I firmly believe, and I am a healthcare provider, that we need to take seriously the mental health of our students as well. I think you have done a great job in protecting the health of our kids, but I don't think we should stop thinking about their mental health. I have been substitute teaching as well this year and was at a school today that had social emotional learning. The kids were asked to list their favorite thing about school, and most of them said their favorite thing was being able to be with friends. They noted they wish they could be closer and interact with friends outside their classroom, but were just glad that they could see each other, interact with each other in person. I urge you to allow us to continue to make this choice for our family. With so many things being taken from us these days, please don't take away our right to choose if our kids continue to go to in person to school. Thank you for your time and consideration. And number 3, good evening. As a dual working household, we really have appreciated the option for traditional learning. I feel in-person learning is very important, especially for younger kids. My daughter is doing so well in first grade, and I would like to continue to see her grow academically. If you were to go complete virtual, you will have to take into consideration that families like mine, where both parents work, won't be able to give that time to their children that is needed for that growth. Also, grandparents, the most at risk, will then be called upon. Salem School has been doing a wonderful job keeping this virus under control under their roof. There hasn't been a widespread outbreak. I am 100% comfortable and confident in sending my child to school. With family members in Illinois, I have seen the emotional toll virtual learning has on the children. They are frustrated and giving up. They are depressed and struggling. I don't want this for my child. Please focus on our community, on our school, and see what a wonderful job you are doing. Thank you for your time. Number 4. I am writing this email to the board as a parent and taxpayer. I have 3 children that attend Salem Grade School. Because of the staff's hard work, we have been able to continue sending our children to school, which has allowed them to have a very small sense of normalcy in their lives. Our children need social interaction with other children of their own age. While this virus is not going to disappear overnight, it has also proven to have a very low morbidity rate, significantly less than certain government officials and the media have attempted to lead all Americans to believe, especially in children. As of today, 11/9/2020, the current case fatality ratio in the state of Wisconsin is 0.86%. Take into consideration the thousands of untested, unreported cases, along with the comorbidity or false reports of deaths. This virus is nowhere near the fictional overreaction that many Americans have fallen for. I want to thank our teachers and all staff members for making this possible and safe for our children, and safe for the staff themselves. However, we have surpassed the point of forced isolation that our children are being hurt more than they are being helped or protected. The lack of school interaction has taken a mental toll on our children and has forced their immune systems to weaken. I strongly urge our school board to keep our doors open. Thank you for all you do. And our 5th and final, unless there is a different motion. Hi. As a parent of 2 kids at Salem, 4th and 1st, I wanted to reach out with my concerns of virtual school. My husband and I both work, as I'm sure many other parents do. School closing would be putting us at an even harder economic state, forcing either one of us to quit our jobs to be home and homeschool full-time. Daycare is too expensive, and quitting an income we need to support our kids isn't the best option either. It also puts my son with ADHD and needed an in-class studies to actually get something at risk. Did that make sense? It also puts my son with ADHD and needed in-class studies to actually get something at risk. Okay, I'm assuming everybody knows what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's okay. It puts my daughter, who already had only half a year at kindergarten, already potentially more behind, as my husband and I are not school teachers and unsure of how to do things. While we understand everyone is in a hard spot and COVID is forcing us all to make decisions we wouldn't have to, closing school puts us and probably more families at an even harder spot. Thank you. Okay, so that was the first 5, and now I'm going to do the staff comments. Okay, number 1. Hello, I did see the recommendation made by the health department regarding going to virtual learning over the holidays, and my only concern with that is the timing of return. I personally feel that the return date should be closer to January 18th due to New Year's and knowing that people are going to get together to celebrate the holiday and New Year. I hope the board will take that into consideration. And number 2, for the board meeting, my parents live near La Crosse, and a lot of districts up there are extending virtual from now until January 11 or 18. So there is a quarantine time after New Year's. I think that makes a lot of sense. The numbers are growing quickly, and as a staff member and parent, I am concerned when something will explode here. Safer at home. Thanks. Okay, and then this is the note from the student. Dear Salem School Board, hi, this is a person from 6th grade. I just wanted to give you my opinion. I think we shouldn't do online virtual school for several reasons. First, sometimes the parents get used to the kids being at school, so they don't even pay attention to the kids and what they are doing. Like the kids could be watching YouTube or doing whatever because the parents don't even care about their kids' grades. Also, the parents can get stressed from having to take care of a bunch of kids at the same time. But if you are an only child, then your parents probably won't get too upset. Second, some kids have a very hard time learning without their teacher inside the room, like me, to explain that what the kids are doing. And also, if the kids are using Google Classroom all the time, or something the kids could get a worksheet and not understand. The kids tell their teacher, and the teacher responds when the kids are done. Then the kids realize that they did it all wrong, and they can't redo it. Personally, I think that I have a hard time even at school with the live streams. Even though I'm at school, some kids really miss their teachers and friends and are wanting to see them again before the year ends. So I think that kids should not go virtual. So we'll count that as 15 minutes. What I can do is keep reading if there is a motion from the board to continue reading. Super. Okay, so again, thank you, especially to these remaining parents who did take the time to write in. It is very much appreciated. And again, just reminding you that we did all read them. It's just we don't have the time in the space right now tonight. So thank you very much.
So on to the item that has sparked a little bit of interest this evening. I just want to back up a little bit and remind people the Kenosha County Health Department recommendation. So the Kenosha County Division of Health has issued a strong recommendation that all schools within the county, K-12, colleges, and universities switch to virtual instruction between November 23rd and January 4th. In announcing this recommendation, they noted the continuing upward trend of COVID-19 cases in Kenosha County with no slowdown projected in the next 12 weeks. They note in their order, while this is not a binding order, districts are urged to give it serious consideration. I do want to show you a little bit of kind of where community spread is at. If you take a look at this, I would call it a heat map. The more red the color is, so gradations from blue to green to orange to red, the redder it gets, the more compacted and larger the number of cases per 100 or per 1,000 people. So you can see Paddock Lake, there's definitely a little bit of an orange kind of area. This, though, does go back to the March timeline, so this is not like a present. This is number of cases per 100 people going back to that point in time. The other one that I think is worthwhile to take a look at is what is called, people have heard the Harvard model, and this is looking at that kind of a burden rate. You can see presently Kenosha County is above that critical line, calling for more extensive measures. I'd also like to remind a little bit of where we started. So when we opened up the school this year, Kenosha County did share a set of metrics for districts to use in making the decision as to when they would potentially close school. This was something that Again, at the beginning of the year, this is what we've been following up until this point to kind of take a look and make decisions as to whether we would potentially revert to virtual instruction. And what their metrics were greater than 3% positive case percentage in a school facility within a 14-day time period. So that would be the cumulative total positive cases over the last 14 days divided by the total number of people in the facility. So for example, right now, we are less than 0.5%. So if you think about the 3%, for a district our size, what you'd do is you'd count up the number of students in person and the number of staff. That 3% for us would be in that 25, 26 window. Number of students. Then the other would be a significant community outbreak is occurring or has recently occurred and is impacting multiple staff, students, and families served by the community. So some could say that that's what Kenosha County is using to give their guidance. The last would be staff absences reach a level that has the potential to compromise the safety or fidelity of the learning environment. This is something that we watch very close as we end up moving students potentially to quarantine. If you recall, a little bit earlier this fall, we did make a decision that we could not safely operate our 4K for a period of time because of the number of staff that we were missing in that particular grade level. So that could be a decision that's made as a school, at a grade level, in a group of grade levels in terms of our ability to do that. And that's one of those things that I tend to watch very closely based on how many substitutes I have in the building and how many people are affected by quarantines as they come up. Just to kind of remind you of where we're at right now, we have our daily COVID dashboard. And on that, we include the number of on-site students, so meaning not including full virtual, but on-site students who have a positive or active test and are currently isolated. And then we do the same thing for staff. The only thing that's different with staff is that we've set an N level to try and keep from being able to zero in potentially. So this will not reflect a number until we get 3 or above. So I can tell you that that number is below 3. Presently, we have 1 on-site student. However, and I should never do this before, I was just notified this afternoon that we do have 2 additional positives. So that will change tomorrow morning to 3 and then 6 who have now recovered. So when you think about that percentage, you would take 3 students, you would divide that by about 850, somewhere in there, to come up with your positive rate if you were looking at that 3%. Our absence rate is higher right now, but that is an absence rate that could be for everything from students going hunting, a student is homesick, a student is, any number of things. It's not necessarily illness. So we are at 91%, but one of those areas that would be, I would say, a warning, if you're not able to kind of siphon through, is that 90% in there. So we're getting a little close to that. That would be, if you think about even during normal times, absent COVID, when you get into flu season, that type of thing. And I would also say that week of Thanksgiving is traditionally a week or time period where our attendance is lower. So
Connie, if I could ask a question, compared to last year, you sort of alluded to it. Compared to last year's numbers, as far as just absences in general, would you say we're at about the same level, essentially, nothing drastically higher or lower?
We're definitely, our attendance rate is lower than normal.
Okay.
But I would also say that, these are different times in that in the past, if a student had sniffles, they wouldn't stay home from school. Now we tell our families if you're coughing, if you have the sniffles, if you have a little scratchy throat, you should be staying home. And so although that is definitely a lower attendance rate than you would have seen last year at the same time. It's not, again, probably something we would really start looking at immediately, especially during this Thanksgiving time, because there are definitely more families that may take off just due to the holiday or traveling or that kind of thing. So,
And with the numbers you have as far as the positive numbers there with students, what's the student population who are actually in school on a daily basis now?
so we have about 750 students at school on a daily basis, but that percentage is based on staff as well. So we have about another 120 staff that go into that. The table on the other side shows you where those positives are scattered. So in other words, you can see, and then also the resulting quarantine. So you may have had a positive student test result that did not result in student quarantines. So an example would be somebody who tests positive but has been out of school for multiple days for other reasons, and we're not in that kind of window. So you can see we do have below the 3N for staff, but that positive has resulted in one homeroom being placed on quarantine. I have it in yellow because that homeroom is still on quarantine. We had a 4K-er, and again, one homeroom on quarantine that is no longer. We had a 5K-er that did not result in quarantine. We have had 2 third graders, but resulting in only one homeroom. That doesn't mean they were in the same homeroom. It just means that they resulted in one homeroom being quarantined. No longer. 4th grade, one homeroom, one student. 6th grade, one student, one homeroom. That homeroom is still on quarantine. And then 7th grade, one student. So not concentrated in a specific area, so that would likely suggest that that spread is not resulting from school, that infection, and in most cases, I can tell you anecdotally, typically comes from a parent to a child. Not always, but if you have an in-residence member, so a sibling, a parent, very often then the other children in the family do test positive eventually.
So what you're saying is some of these students across grades could be from the same family.
Could be siblings. Yep.
So we have 2 homerooms that are quarantined right now, so that could also really impact that attendance rate.
So we don't include quarantine in our
in the daily
attendance rate.
Okay.
And mainly because they are still attending school, so we move them to virtual when they come up, and so we don't include them in that. Yeah, but you can see then, so we do have one coming back the end of the week. So by the end of the week, we will only have one homeroom. Now again, this could change tomorrow, but that's where we're at right now. So I did also felt that you might want to know, to the extent that we knew, what other districts surrounding us in Kenosha County were doing, because remember that this recommendation went to all schools in Kenosha County. So you can see Brighton School District did not accept the recommendation. Paris did not accept the recommendation. Kenosha schools, Kenosha Unified, did not accept the recommendation. At the high school district level, Central and Wilmot did not accept the recommendation. For Bristol, they have a Wednesday meeting when they will be deciding. You can see Salem is in there. Riverview did not accept the meeting, but they're still discussing. They have another meeting to relook at it. Tonight's meeting we have I gotta look at that, is
River.
yes. And then Randall is no decision yet. Lakewood did accept the recommendation, and Wheatland has a Wednesday meeting to look at the recommendations. So you can see just in terms of the area, I felt like you might want to know that information. So, I'm happy to answer any other questions. As I said from the beginning, the Kenosha County has been very clear that this was, as you know, I meet with them once a week. They have said consistently the schools are doing a great job. They have not seen a major outbreak within schools. Their goal in shutting down the schools is to impact the communities. So in other words, if you think about the safer at home, the more people not moving around, the less likely there would be spread. I share the other school districts in that one of my concerns would be, I don't think anybody would disagree that the impact of moving to virtual schooling for kids is slight. We know that there are negative impacts of that. I wonder about the positive impact if many other school districts are not following the recommendations. So that would be the only piece I would say in terms of why I think it's important to look and see the districts around us and if they are following the recommendation to have the intended effect in Kenosha County. So the options really, there are a lot of options the board could do. I have not made a recommendation, but I'm just sharing what possibilities could be. One, the board could accept the recommendation as it is. They could accept the recommendation but modify it, for example, adding more time, taking some time away. They could not accept the recommendation and continue following the initial recommendation related to the percent of active positives in staffing. So that would go back to what was there in the fall. You could not accept the recommendation, but then approve other actions tied into that. Take no action, or I'm sure there are other options as well.
Would like to begin.
Well, I personally think that we as a school district have done our due diligence in planning, in making sure that our numbers stay, consistent with what has been recommended based on the percentage guidelines. Overwhelmingly, I'll say from a community outreach, it was very overwhelming to me that their wishes is to keep the school district open unless, numbers get out of control or obviously if legally we're forced to shut down. So, based on my position on that, I think what I think would be a good idea is not to accept the recommendation, continue following the initial recommendations related to the percentage of active positives and staffing ability. That's my personal thought.
I'll kind of go along those same lines, Nick. I think the school has done an outstanding job. There's a lot of mitigation strategies that are in place here to keep the kids safe, to keep the staff safe. I think if you look at what all the current research is showing, it's what Connie brought up anecdotally, that it's not spreading within the schools. It's typically being brought into the schools from outside. And I just think regionally, we're not seeing it in the school. I also think there's some assumptions made that when you close schools down, people stay at home. I think that there is a possibility that when schools are shut down, it frees up people to travel to family gatherings and other places where we know that the virus is spreading from. So my recommendation would also be to allow the school to monitor it, to keep those mitigation strategies in place and respond when it's necessary.
I've read the letters. I've tried to see this from both sides. I can understand how there are probably staff members here that think that we should leave for a while, just for the safety of their situations. And I understand that we sort of serve the taxpayers who seem in abundance to want us to continue doing what we're doing. I believe because we're doing it very well. I was honestly a little put off by this whole recommendation that 0 to schools is the problem. We're not. The problem is out there in the community. It's people acting irresponsibly and grouping together without being safe. And here we don't do that. I think here we're very, very conscious about what's in the best interest of our families and our kids and the education that they need that we provide. So I tend to go along with the gentleman on this, that I think that we should go with the not accept, continue following initial action.
Yeah, my position is, I agree with Nick, Ted, and Jack with regards to that, and I would also say that it's because of the outstanding efforts of all staff at this school, and making sure that all mitigation, all safety, everything that we could do and are doing is taking place, and I think that's showing in the small numbers. One is too many, but when you look at what's happening around the state and certainly around the country, and when you look at the fact that we have a normal school population of at or near 1,000, and when you look at the students who are attending now with the 750 or so plus well over 100 staff in this building, I think that we are doing an extraordinary job. So I certainly support not accepting the recommendation of the county health department. And also adding that if things were to get to a different situation, that we as a board then could also come together and make some other decisions in the future if we needed to. Yeah.
Dana, you have a
Summary.
comment?
Yeah.
or-
I'd like to do my whole summary Danaism parts. So a couple things, just so we hit some of the major parts. First of all, staff, we are in contact with Connie on a regular basis. We hear the concerns that are coming in. So I want to make sure that staff and teachers hear us and know our hearts and know that we do have your best interest in mind as well. Whatever this decision turns out to be, it is nothing personal. It is nothing against the staff or us not caring about your safety. We know that administratively, Connie and her team have gone just above and beyond in all of the safety measures and everything that has been put in place. So directing these comments to staff and teachers, if you do have a concern, please reach out to Connie and or your principal specifically, and make sure that your voices are heard. I want to make sure that is stated. I know that these numbers are being put up on screen. So students and teachers that happen to be a statistic at this point, please know that that is not how we are looking at you. Anybody, any student, any staff member that walks into the building happen to be carrying the COVID, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you guys. This is not a situation of blaming, pointing fingers. This is we are all in this together. And it does not necessarily mean that you did anything wrong. This has nothing to do with us not loving and caring for you. This is all out there, and it's science at this point, and it's a moving target. So we don't necessarily know where you're picking it up or whatever. We, of course, urge you to be safe and go forth with what the CDC is saying. I just want to make sure that the community hears that as well. We're not thumbing through numbers and putting people's last names on some hit list or anything along those lines. Please know that and hear that. With these letters, these amazing amount of letters that came in, this is an opportunity for us to celebrate how government is working at its finest right now, where we have the lowest level of control. So what that means is these 5 board members are able to get together and represent these people that emailed us specifically. So again, know that directly from our mouths, you guys were heard, and you can hear from the comments that were made before me that we have heard you and we respect your opinions, and we know that we can associate an address, a face, a family with you guys, and we are able to react accordingly. I know sometimes that's tricky when governments are considered because you do feel like just a number. So I hope that tonight, and just knowing that you guys trusted us with our letters, thank you for that and trusting us with that information and making sure that your voices are heard. That all being said, I agree with everything that was already said. I understand that it's a view to look at it where we could shut down from a potential safety risk, but I would urge, and I myself like to look at it from a bigger picture of just the 5 letters that were specifically read. There was autism mentioned, there was depression, all of the words, the buzzwords that we're hearing these days, where our families in the community are having a hard time. And one thing that we can be thankful for is that we are putting the time and energy to make sure that these kids have a home for these days. The recommendation is that's fine. That's what the Kenosha Health Department does. Understand that. It is not a mandate, which means we're having this particular action right now. I think that's great that they're going about their meetings and working with us, but in our specific community, I think it's best for the whole picture to keep the students in school. That being said, how about a motion?
I move that we not accept the recommendation to continue, and that we continue following the initial recommendation related to the percentage of active positives and staffing ability. And at some point in the future, if we need to review it again, that we do so as a board.
So moved.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries. Thank you very much. I know there's a lot of people online watching, so if you want to keep listening, feel free. If not, thank you for joining us this evening.
And I will be sending a message out to families, just letting them know about the outcome of this meeting. But I'll also be sharing with them, I'm sure they will enjoy hearing some helpful tips that they can help us in keeping our doors open, continuing really to monitor their children and keeping them home if they're sick, being very cognizant of who they're interacting with and who their children are interacting with outside of school, because that is one of the things that we've seen where we may, for example, quarantine students within a classroom, but if that student's had interaction with other students out in the community, that's something that we need to be aware of as well. So as much help as we can get on that. And then just their support we continue to need for our staff and our students. So I'll be sending out a little information for them tomorrow. But moving on, and it seems a little related, so certainly a little difficult to address, but we do have a resignation to approve this evening. That's of our school nurse, Julie Fisher. She is on a job share, so it's a 0.52 FTE job share. She was employed at Salem School District since September 2011, is pursuing an opportunity with Astellas Pharmaceutical that will provide her with new opportunities and career growth. She has been amazing during this COVID time and very helpful. The contract does call for $3,000 in liquidated damages. My recommendation, because she is 50%, would be that be the reduced amount at the 50% at $1,500. But again, just as a side note, thanking her for incredible work and support. We do have a plan tentatively in place for staffing and replacing. If you recall, at the beginning of the year, we did increase the amount of staff we have in our health office. Absolutely not saying in any way she can be replaced, but I don't think we're leaving the district in peril right now while we decide overall what to do with that position. The recommendation would be to accept Mrs. Fisher's resignation effective November 27th, 2020, and assess liquidated damages in the amounts of $1,500.
A motion to accept Mrs. Fisher's resignation effective November 27th, 2020, and assesses liquidated damages in the amount of $1,500.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries.
Now on to the fun stuff. Just bringing you back a little bit, we had a special board meeting on September 16th, 2020. And at that, they showed this kind of trend of historically low interest rates. And a decision, I guess I won't say a decision, guidance was given at that time to Baird to keep an eye on interest rates. We had about a $1 million bond out there that was at a little higher interest rate. That goes back to that energy efficiency bond that money was borrowed for. And so the agreement is that we would kind of watch that to see if there was an opportune time to refinance. Just bringing you to mind kind of the calendar, you can see that concept of closing on refunding those bonds and funds wired to the district would be January. We're a little bit early, but the goal at that time was by November 17th to adopt an award resolution finalizing terms and interest rates. So lo and behold, that's where we are this evening. We did manage to get a significantly, when you're talking $1 million, it maybe doesn't seem like a significantly reduced interest rate, but it is. It drops us down into that about 2.2 by the time you add all of the handling fees and things like that, from about 2.8, 2.9, somewhere in there. And that is a significant enough amount to make it worthwhile to refinance. It won't have an incredible impact on our operating budget. It'll give us probably $4,000 or $5,000 additional a year. But $4,000 or $5,000 additional a year is money that can be spent for kids instead of money that is spent on interest. So the recommendation would be to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $1 million general obligation refunding bonds.
I move to,
Ooh, stereo. That was almost identical.
no.
I move to approve
I
the
defer to you.
resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $1 million general obligation refunding bonds.
So moved.
Second.
Stereo.
You can have that is Steve Brown.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and motion carries. Thanks for doing that, Connie. I know
Thank
that
you.
was proactive and helpful.
So speaking of proactive and
Oh, good segue.
so if you recall at the last board meeting, I brought up the kind of ugly news around the 2021 employee health insurance renewal. WPS had come back with a 28% across the board increase in premiums. Needless to say, that is a huge amount for our district, and we have had zero impact in trying to get that reduced in any way. That would, for our overall budget, if the board were to have approved that or were to approve that, that would increase our expenditures in this next calendar year by $436,133. Approximately $60,000 of that would fall to our employees, and about $376,000 of that would come out of our district budget. Knowing that we're down 70 students, that is a hugely concerning number. It would also move our projected family health plan employee contribution, just to give you an example, from $363 a month to $467 a month. And then if you're on that Arise plan or the Select, which is more of the HMO, from $215 to $274 a month. So given that, we did go out, we took it out to bid to see if we could get another company to take a look at us. We knew it would be difficult because we had a high loss ratio, and we have had multiple years of a high loss ratio. I will tell you that Brianna did incredible work, Brianna Hellenbrand, and she came back with, I think, a pretty amazing option for our district. No other company would bid, but at the last minute, United Healthcare came in This is one of the largest healthcare insurance providers. They, in this area, are providing healthcare for Kenosha Unified, so they are in the area. You can see in terms of hospitals, they are all over the state, but very concentrated in the Milwaukee, Racine, and Kenosha area. All of the major hospitals in this area would be covered under UHC. We weren't able to get, WPS is not super happy with us right now. So we weren't able to get the top, there's like a disruption report that you run. So it takes a look at all of your claims, and then it looks to see if there might be people that would potentially have to look at a new physician or something along those lines. We have not been able to get some of those reports yet, but what we do know is that the majority of our district's claims, so the vast majority of our claims go through Aurora, Freighter, Ascension, Children's, Medical College, Pro Healthcare, Bellin, ThedaCare, and UW Health, all of which are in the network under UHC. There is, and I'll be putting this out to staff, there's a My UHC, so you can actually go in and type in your doctors or your places where you get medical care to see if for sure that they would be covered. But we feel pretty confident that there will be minimal disruption if the district were to decide to make this change. This is a lot that you're not even gonna look at. I will send it out to staff. What's important about this is up above are all the coverages. So in other words, the deductible, the things that are covered, those things that are would be subject to copay, et cetera, they're all identical across the board. So when we go out, when the district goes out to bid, they ask for a bid on the same parameters, because you can't compare. If you say like one plan has a $10,000 deductible and another plan has a $2,000 deductible, you can't make comparisons. These would be, so if you take a look at WPS Select, which is the Arise, and then going across to UHC, the aspects of the insurance plan are the same. Deductible's the same, coverage level's the same, copay's the same. Where it gets interesting is the bottom line. And so going with United Healthcare, it would actually decrease us from this year. So they came in with a 7% decrease across the board for what we're paying this year. But you can't just look at that. You have to look at what WPS would be charging us next year. So if you look at the decrease from what WPS would be charging, it's about $552,000. So about over a $500,000 difference if we were to switch to UHC. If a decision is made to do that, one thing that might be a little different for us is that right now, remember, on that statewide plan, our teachers are putting in 15%, or our staff is. On the Arise plan, they're only putting 10%. To even that out, my recommendation, if we move forward with this, would be to do a 10% across the board for all that participate in the plan. Now, there is one negative of this plan, and that is that the district presently has a single plan, a single plus one, so an employee and spouse plan, an employee and children, so like a single parent with 3 children, and a family. That employee plus children, meaning multiple children, is a very unique policy, and most insurers do not offer that. So what this would do is it would force that group, and right now there are 5 employees, to move up into family, so that there would be, for that small group, an actual increase going from this year to next year, only if they were on a rise. So in other words, if they were on WPS, it still would be less, even given that. But if they were on a rise last year and they were in that very unique situation, and from what I can tell, there's 4 or 5 of our employees that might fall in that. They will see an increase in their premium because of the fact that they'll have to move to the family.
Connie, with UHC, with what they are presenting for the 2021-2022 academic year, is that just for that year? Is that a 2-year or 3-year plan projection?
So it's a 1 year. Right now with coronavirus, you won't get more than a 1 year from anybody. It's one of the things I asked. So I said, so how do we know this isn't like one of those leader rates? They pull us over and then they turn around and jack us 50%. Well, their answer to that is your company this year jacked you 28% and you've been with them for many, many years. So there isn't an ability to control that aspect. Your control is to do like we did, which would be to go out to bid. I do think, though, that we are moving towards, I'm not going to say it's going to happen this year, but we're moving towards a better level of loss ratio, which hopefully will make us a little more attractive either way. It is unlikely that they would come back with a 20, turnaround and jack us way up next year. But in my conversations with M3, nobody's giving out much for guaranteed rates, mainly because of coronavirus, mainly because you have a change in administration and you don't know what that will bring in terms of health insurance and that type of thing. And also just because at this point we're brand new for them and they're going to need to see kind of where we.
Are there any, as far as the fees we pay M3, how does that work?
So we pay 1%, it's about 1.5% of the total.
Okay.
So they actually make less money when they get a better rate for us. I mean, that is kind of a unique situation with insurance companies, but the broker gets 1% of your total contract.
Thank you.
Connie, when UHC bid on this, they're presented with the historic
Yep.
loss ratios, right?
Yep.
So they kind of know what they're getting into.
Absolutely. Not only that, they're presented with a report that basically tells them we have to do a census of our employees and that kind of thing, so they know the ages and that, and they know what our claims were in the last couple of years and taking a look at that.
I can speak to UHC. My wife has that through her school, and I'm also on the plan. And as a senior, there are certain things that I have to deal with. Shingle shots can be very expensive. These hearing aids are very expensive. UHC covered them, and we didn't have any hassle with the company at all. They were very good.
They're definitely, I mean, they're a large healthcare provider in this area. I did a fair amount of looking up on, like the recommendations and comments and things like that. I mean, you always see a little bit of, one way or another. You're certainly going to see those on WPS. But it is one of the higher rated healthcare providers in Wisconsin.
That's great.
So what are the next steps? Tonight is not a decision making. The next steps are just to fine tune those numbers. I believe we're there. They've gotten an okay. You don't know the absolute final because you don't know how many people will sign up for this one or that one. But the rates are there. So the rates that they've given us are locked in if we choose to do that. We'll need to hold staff virtual meetings, information meetings. As you can imagine right now, a thought around changing healthcare plans in the middle of a pandemic is very anxiety inducing for staff. If we were talking about, a small amount of money, I would never recommend it. I think that we at least have to have this conversation around, do we walk away with $500,000 additional expenses when we don't need to do that right now? And those are expenses that hit our employees as well. I would say we're gonna have to look at a special board meeting just for the purpose of approving, which will probably be early December if a decision is made to continue to move forward looking at something. Transition planning then occurs with individual employees that have unique health situations, just to kind of go through and make sure that there aren't any people that are left with gaps in coverage or in the middle of treatments with a specific provider. There's always that kind of transition planning that occurs. And there's agreements typically, like a new insurance company when they come in, if you're under a serious health condition in care, they're not gonna transition you like within a day or something like that. They carry those employees kind of forward. Although I do believe that we'll have very limited disruption in the new, if a change is made. The plan would begin January 1st, 2021, if a decision is made to do that.
Great. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
So committee reports, I don't have any. We didn't have any meetings in between. I'm not at this moment, only because trying to deal with refinancing, insurance, and everything else right now, there isn't really a lot of other stuff to take on in between. But again, just a reminder, we'll likely need to schedule a special board meeting early in December to finalize health insurance. Our next regular school board meeting will be 7 p.m. Tuesday, December 15th, 2020, here in the IMC.
Connie, what's the, I know before we go, and before we adjourn, the status, how are things going with regards to business office matters? I mean, in general,
So
nothing specific.
I posted the position, but as you can imagine, there are not a lot of applicants mid-year. I met actually today with Baird Financial. They do provide their professionals to come in and help kind of during transition periods. We met with them today and they felt that they could provide a day a week on site and then another day, potentially a week, virtual support for the district. That may well be the best alternative for us to get through this time period. They themselves said it's a busy time, but it's not like one of those, like if you were talking July where you're looking at audits and starting the school year, that would be a much more difficult time for them to provide coverage. They met with me and kind of our bookkeeper, Kelsey, to talk a little bit today. So it's very possible we may look at some sort of an arrangement with Baird to get us through the remainder of this school year and post in the spring to have a wider open posting period. But we'll have to kind of see how that goes.
So I would assume, Madam President, that at some point the Personnel Committee will be looking into that whole process, correct?
Not necessarily. That would be a.
So I would say that if we were going to look at hiring
Right,
a
that's what I
permanent
meant.
person in that position, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
That's what I meant, hiring.
We would involve board members, just like we do with any administrative hiring, we would involve board
So like
members
the
with that.
principal process.
But at this point, I am not, we did post the position. I don't, as I look at kind of the applicant pool, many of them would be provisionally licensed, don't have experience in the position. And for us right now, I don't think that's a great idea. My hope would be Baird they know a lot about kind of statewide how to handle things, how to keep us running. My intent, if we were to go that route, would be to get their expertise to help us decide, for example, are we delegating out the different responsibilities in that office appropriately? Are there things that we could be doing that we could leverage certain funds to support student learning in a way potentially that could be better? And having that kind of expertise, it's definitely on a daily basis pricier, but certainly on a week-to-week basis would be cheaper because it wouldn't be a full-time person. But having that kind of consulting, I think, might be good for our district until we're able to post and have the best possible outcome in terms of applicants.
Right.
But we won't let the bank shut us down.
No.
So,
Steve will take a while.
That's right.
Any other questions before? Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Yes, I move that the board go into closed session in the middle school library under the following statutes. Wisconsin Statute 19.851D, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. And that deals with individual employee performance review, and also Wisconsin Statute 19.851F, considering the financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where, from paragraph B, applies, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations. And this would include individual employee medical information. And afterwards, the board will reconvene in open session to take any action from closed session.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Closed, and we are in closed. Thank you for joining, everyone.
Thank you.